Hey guys, it's Dr. Richie Cole from Radical Counseling Consultation. This is the second episode. If you remember last week, I talked about a little bit about my history and about radical counseling consultation and about the DRAP model, which is part of one of the foundational constructs of mind construction. Mind construction is my own little form of therapy, which is just my own twist on CBT. And as I said, there's two foundational constructs, three levels, some critical factors, and there's two primary critical factors. So the DRAC cognitive behavioral model is one of the foundational constructs. It's a psychological model. Once again, for review, it deals with the anatomy of self, which is behavior, thoughts, feelings, and our core beliefs. And the dynamics being that our problems are manifested in our behavior and or our emotions, centered in our thinking and driven by our core beliefs. The role of feelings is somewhat de-emphasized because feelings don't directly cause behavior. And that's an important thing because we want to learn how to proactively utilize our mind to regulate our emotions, to reflect on the potential consequences of our actions and therefore make good decisions. And then be able to access our core beliefs, but that's a later thing. In terms of critical factors, there's a lot of critical factors that are necessary for positive behavioral, cognitive, emotional, and even paradigmatic change. Time, effort, energy, practice, knowledge, psychoeducational material. And so really having significant change is somewhat of a challenging, elusive, one day at a time, never ending process. But two of the most primary critical factors are awareness and motivation. Awareness is important in terms of what is happening in our mind, our body, and our surroundings. If we have low awareness, a lot of different things can happen, which can lead to us being in a bad situation because we weren't really reflecting on or thinking about the potential ramifications or our surroundings. So really being in touch with what's happening in our mind, body, and surroundings, awareness should be really high. The other primary critical factor is motivation. If you're not motivated for change, not much is going to happen. You're not going to put the effort and energy that's required to bring about change. They say when the pain of staying the same is greater than the fear of change, then we are usually in a position to develop that motivation to push through severe situations, to get out of our comfort zone, and to start making some changes. So once again, primary critical factors are awareness and motivation. Now, motivation, there's different levels, say from 1 to 10, but there's also different sources of motivation. There's extrinsic motivation and there's intrinsic motivation. Extrinsic motivation is that motivation which is external to us, such as, oh, I'm doing it for my family, or I'm doing it to stay out of jail, or something like that. But intrinsic motivation is when it's for self, when we're internally motivated to make changes. And sometimes it's because we've experienced what they call incomprehensible demoralization and betrayed ourselves so many times, and we're sick and tired of being sick and tired, and we want to evolve to the next level and fulfill our assignment that we've been given, and really be the best that we can be. But fear manifested in a variety of different modes, such as laziness, procrastination, reluctance, doubt, can really paralyze us and get in the way from us progressing. So once again, when the pain of staying the same is greater than the fear of change, we tend to be able to overcome that fear to make those changes. And so awareness and motivation. The second foundational construct is the biopsychosocial spiritual model. And that's really like when we talk about the DRAP model, which is the diagram of the relationship and anatomy of thyself, we're just talking about psychological factors within self, our behavior, our thoughts, our feelings, and our core beliefs. But not everything is psychological. So we pull back and we've got to incorporate biological factors, psychological factors, social, spiritual factors, as well as oftentimes cultural factors. And we can even implement economic considerations. But with the biopsychosocial spiritual, biological has to do with physiological phenomena such as exercise, sleep, nutrition, alcohol, drugs, medication, genetic predisposition, sleep, all that. The psychological, once again, has to do with our behavior, our thoughts, our feelings, our core beliefs. But positive self-talk, thought stopping, thought switching, being in therapy, reading positive books, self-help books, being encouraged, different sermons. There's a lot of different ways, positive music, and journaling. There's so many different activities that we could be involved with. And sometimes that has to do with creating a gratitude list in our mind, such as we might wake up and be like, man, I don't want to face the world and deal with everything and everybody out there. And then we just got to be like, you know what? That first automatic thought accompanied with that feeling, we can choose to put that out of the way and say, you know what, God, thank you for this day. This is the day you have made. I'm going to be glad. I'm going to rejoice in it, and start turning it around and realize, you know what, I've got my eyesight. My kids are all right. I'm not in jail. I'm not in prison. It's not World War III. There's no catastrophe happening right now. And that all in all, it's okay. But as human beings, we want to find something to be fearful about, to worry about. The good book tells us, be anxious for nothing, nor be discouraged, nor dismayed, like 360 something times. So we know that being anxious is a sin. Now, sin just means it misses the mark. Sin just means it deviates from perfection. But anything that deviates from perfection works against us to a degree. Paradoxically, we're never going to be perfect in this animal body. We're a spiritual being inhabiting a body. Now, the thing is that the social component to the biopsychosocial spiritual model has to do with our interactions with others, relationships. Really, everything important in life comes down to relationship with ourselves, relationship with God, our higher power, Jesus Christ, depending on what your spiritual beliefs are, relationship with our significant other, our wife, our husband, our children, our parents, friends, colleagues, associates, people we kick it with. That's why oftentimes people who are, say, caught up in active addiction and go to detox and residential rehab and want to make some changes, if they get out and start hanging out with the same people that are doing the same thing, they're going to end up doing the same thing. So a lot of times for addicts who relate to one another and can be somewhat intimidated by so-called normal, regular people, we like to associate with people that we could relate to and identify with, but hopefully that are on that same pathway. So instead of going and kicking it back with our old friends that are still using what they call lower companions, we might develop some relationships with people in AA, NA, CA, or the church, or whatever the case may be. But for us to have significant positive changes in all aspects of our life, it's got to be a comprehensive change. Now, we recommend only little incremental changes, because if you try to make a change that's too big, it's not going to stick. And I'll give examples of that later. But just sticking to the biopsychosocial spiritual model, the fourth realm is the spiritual. And that has to do with matters of the heart. That has to do with morality or religion or, spirituality. And it could be a lot of different things to a lot of different people. I've kind of, done some self-disclosure in the past that I was raised by a father that came from a Jewish family. He didn't really introduce me to religion per se, taught me morality. Some of it I really gleaned onto, and some of it I just dismissed and ran my own program and kind of felt, what, if I feel it's good, then it's good. But I ended up making a lot of poor decisions. And so if it feels good, do it. Didn't turn out to be a sustainable belief system. So trying to bring it back to, hey, do the right thing. Once again, of course, not with perfect adherence, but after being an atheist for a quarter of a century because of addiction and being introduced to Cocaine Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, Alcoholics Anonymous, all that stuff, it introduced me to the concept of a higher power or a power greater than yourself. And that was what started to plant the seed for 25 years later to end up embracing my current belief system, which is consistent with Scripture, the Holy Bible, the Old Testament, the New Testament, the four Gospels, the book of Revelation. And I've come to believe that the Bible is inerrant, that it is the truth of the real God of Israel, of Jacob, of Abraham, of Isaac. And so if I would have heard myself saying these things years ago, I would have been like, you know what? He lost his mind. He went cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. He's just starry-eyed, but really it had been a process that has been over a long period of time. Like I said, a 25-year journey that ended up getting at the beginning of that journey maybe 10 years ago ended up coming to believe. I answered the knock on the door of my heart November 4th, 2014. So it was about 7 years ago, and had studied the Bible already for a few years. My good friend, buddy, colleague, mentor, associate, Pastor Phil Aguilar, aka the Chief, played a huge role in that. There's other people that have played a huge role in that. And once I came to believe, I really looked back and saw that Christ had been with me my whole life. And sometimes I'll say things with repetition. You might have heard it before, but people will say, "Dude, you speak too fast." But the thing is, I'll say some things with repetition. So that's just my story. But the only reason I mention that is because the spiritual is going to be unique to each individual. Now, I have my beliefs, and but really, with spirituality, we want to, just like the other three areas, we want to do some introspection, and you want to look at what was I indoctrinated with as a young person. What did I come from a home where there was hyper religiosity? Did I come from a home like mine where there was really no God wasn't talked about? God wasn't really part of the thing. Did you come from a home where there was healthy, focus? Whatever. There's people who are Buddhist, Hindu, Islamic. We all have our own perspectives, and of course, all of us feel our perspective is right, obviously. So, my whole trip is Jesus and Scripture, and that's the perspective I'm coming from. But the process of sanctification, which is the change that takes place from the inside out, that begins when you get saved or when you accept Christ in your life, it's been a journey. It's going to continue to be a journey. I'm not the best role model. It's just recently where I stopped using cuss words. I never had any hate in my heart, but I would just cuss as punctuation. And so, I've tried to reduce that, and on the way to eliminating that. So you might hear me slip here and there. So it's a process. But for those of you who are contemplating, accepting Christ in your heart, please don't look to Christians for that to be your marker, because there are none righteous, no, not one. We all fail as human beings. None of us have arrived or have it together or perfect. So, do it based on your experience with God. And maybe, I used to say there's many different pathways towards enlightenment. And I came to believe there's only one, but there's many different pathways to that one, So basically, the spiritual is something where you're going to look within and say, hey, how did I grow up? What was I like? When did I deviate from that? What am I like now in terms of my spiritual relationship with the energy, the force that created everything, the thing that holds all things together, from the galaxies to subatomic particles, the creator, God. And you're going to be like, well, where do I want to be? What is my ideal spiritual self? And that's something that we can do when we look at the biopsycho spiritual model. We want to look at, okay, what are my strengths in terms of biological, psychological, social, spiritual, and what are my deficits, or where is there room for growth? And like I said before, when you want to make some changes towards the better, you want those to be incremental. You want to take baby steps. That way it has the greater likelihood of sticking, because it's easy to get into a bad routine or a rut, but developing a good, positive, constructive routine can be quite challenging. So it takes intention, it takes motivation, it takes awareness, it takes making a plan, and it takes doing it in baby steps. But it's amazing what can be attained. Remember the 3 T's. Things take time. It's a process. Trust the process. So once again, radical counseling consultation, mind construction as the therapeutic approach, 2 foundational constructs, the DRAT, cognitive behavioral model, the biopsychosocial spiritual model, a bunch of critical factors, but 2 primary critical factors, awareness and motivation. Next time, I'll probably get into the 3 different levels. There's level 1, level 2, level 3, and I'll expose you to that. But one thing I'm really hoping that soon my wife will get in this with me, Sandra Esquivel Cole. She's also a licensed therapist. And that you guys, if you have any interest in this, if you want to get some feedback, you have questions about relationships, about spirituality, about life, about anything, I'm really hoping that you'll start emailing some questions in. And it's up there right now, which is radicalcounseling@gmail.com. And please send in questions so that way I can respond to those questions and we can make this something that will be beneficial for those people who ended up watching it and subscribing to it. So that's it for today, guys. Thank you for tuning in. Please hit subscribe and let me know what you want to hear, what you want to talk about. And there's going to be some good things happening. All right. So it's good to see you. Stay positive. Much love and respect. Adios.